of unusual phenomena. I don't think that's really the case, because how many times have we experienced and said, we got things done in no time? And when you go around looking for a parking space and it just emerges, I mean, these are just as miraculous kinds of things, I would think. Or we get money.
Especially in New York City.
There are a lot of little things that we don't even give half a thought to.
Yeah.
But we are quite miraculous, really.
Well,
I have a few short questions, and I also want to honor your time. Have you...
oh, I'm here. I'm here for you. I can't even leave the chair. It's up to you. I mean, all I need to know is when you want to close, and I'll close.
Well, has the teaching been complete at this time besides the questions?
Yeah, I think so. I feel it's all in there now.
Okay, one question is the geometric language, or the how far does that go into the dimensions?
Just asked that question not too long ago.
Somebody already asked that question.
Yeah, I'll answer it again.
Sorry,
the geometry stretches through all dimensional levels whatsoever. That's what created all the dimensional levels. However, the geometry may not be recognizable from language, from dimension to dimension. But no more than, like, say, but there is a similarity, like the difference between a two-dimensional flat surface and a three-dimensional object is really very different. It's very, very different. But it's recognizable that the two-dimensional one is a three-dimensional one. And if you were to see a three-dimensional one relative to the four-dimensional one, it would be more distorted in certain ways if you're thinking along mathematical lines, but you would still kind of get the feel. But if you go way up in the dimensions or way down, and not thinking in terms of mathematical models, but rather in wavelength dimensional things, they really do change dramatically. But there was only one pattern, the pattern that is now existing around your body in the third dimension, though it is a third-dimensional pattern here in the third dimension. It's the same one that creates everything, no matter where you are.
Okay. The 32 ascended masters that you spoke of, I'm wondering, was there a purpose of the 32 rather than being 33, or 32 equaling 5?
Well, I think that they chose 32 because the teachers that were, this is a guess. I got to pull a guess out of the thing on this one. But I did kind of think about this before, and there were 32 Syrian members that came in that started our race. It was the father race, and those, and I think that they chose that size because that was who was teaching them this. But that's the only reason I can say. Other than that, I don't know why they chose 32.
Okay, and I've been experiencing, rather than us leaving the third dimension and moving to the fourth, I've been experiencing an overlapping of the fourth and fifth here already, and that there will be, I've been seeing beautiful visions of what's ahead of the children, the educational system, and the living possibilities, and the cooperative, and the harmony, etc. And I know it's here. I know that it's here. So it's like I'm wondering if I know you mentioned that one group would be staying here. Perhaps this is already happening.
You mean we've already shifted?
The shift is already in process. There's an overlapping already occurring.
There is an overlapping of certain energies as we approach this. It's true. There's a certain overlapping, and the process is well underway. But there is a very distinct time. I mean, we will come to a place where our thoughts will become more and more powerful. Our feelings will become more and more powerful, the manifestation in this reality, as we approach them. It becomes more and more powerful if we can control it. If we can control our emotions and be in a Merkaba and these kinds of things, if we can focus, we could, you say, feel an overlapping, and all the energies are going that direction. But there will come a day of a very distinct change. And you'll know, you'll say, this is definitely different than what was before. And that's what I'm referring to at that time. But there is it's just like all the pyramids were built first on the fourth dimensional level of the Earth, and then we coincided with their structures on the third dimensional level. The reality has been already created on the fourth dimension, this dream that we all want and that we all have agreed upon is already functioning on the fourth dimension. And I think that you're just tuning to it and feeling it. You know.
And just one comment, and then I'll go to these eager hands. I just want to mention that the dolphin trips that I get information about have been keenly lined up with specific dates, and a lot of it has to do with grid work. And specific information is about specific grid lines, etc. And I've been told that when people come back, that they're like light vortexes, and they have the options. There's specific information that comes in about what they can do, and always be a choice, of course. But it's like there is a lot of grid work going on with many other people also, with many other ventures going out in different areas. And I don't know if you would want to comment on that at all.
Okay. Most of the grid work of the planet was done prior to 1989. There was a period of time from about, most of it started in about the 1980s and went to about 1989. Where, and specifically, especially in 84, 85, 86, and 87, there were thousands and thousands and thousands of people all over the world that were drawn to sacred sites all over the world, who had these crystals and all these things and didn't know why they were doing these things. And you guys are probably a lot of them. And had to go there and make chants and all these other things and walk around pyramids and wondering why you were doing them, but you know you had to do them. And that was the final alignment and setting up of all these sites that were around the world. And it was real important. And then when the grid finally was activated and it became alive and completed, which was, I believe it was February 4th of 1989, then there was, it was actually there and completed. What's now occurring is very fine level tuning. It's really minute tuning. It doesn't require the numbers of people that there were before. Instead of, there's probably at least 100,000 people doing that or more. At this point, it's really just handfuls of people who, because of the rapid changes in the grid, have to go in there and every once in a while align something here, align something there, which usually means being physically on a certain place of the earth and doing something that usually comes from within that tells you what to do. And so, but there's really not a lot of that going on right now. What is going on is important. That doesn't mean because there's not much going on is important, but there just isn't anything at all like what was happening for a while. And I don't foresee there ever being any for a long time either, because the hard work has all taken place.
In reference to your speaking about the power of two joining together in the Merkaba, do you see that there would ever be any need or any purpose served by a large number, such as those of us in this room, joining together in this dimension?
Well, that's not for me to decide. But if I could ever foresee, sure I could foresee. There must be a reason why the information was given, and the Earth is using it. So I assume that there is a time coming when we are going to use it. It said we would use it, so I think we're going to use it. And so what I see initially, though I can't see much beyond it, is small groups of 10, 12, or in that kind of area, or maybe more, joining together, though there may be some real large groups. It requires one person's spine that has to be, and the group chooses this person, and the person isn't really the leader, they just got to use a spine. That's why they use Duncan. They use Duncan's spine. It requires a human spine to set up the Merkaba, or a spine, a dolphin spine, or a whale spine. It's the nature of the thing. It requires a living person at the center. And the dolphins do the same thing. They choose one of them to be the leader. And then they each have their individual Merkabas, and then they set up a group Merkaba, a huge one, that the whole group is connected to. In the same way with the whales. And this is also why it has a certain downfall in a way. There's always positive and negative things with everything. We're in that kind of world. When one of the whales comes in and beaches themselves, one's 10 miles back. Come in a little while later and come slamming into the same beach because they're following this one aspect, that they've chosen that as their center core. And, there's no longer individualism when you use the group Merkaba. If there's a group of 12 people here right now and they set up a group Merkaba, they picked one of them, they set up the fields and they did it, and if it was real, their individualness is gone forever. They are now one spirit with 12 bodies. And they have the same spirit in each one of them. Lots of people do this all over the universe, and it's not unusual. But you got to be ready to do such a thing. And I don't know if we're quite ready there. Soon.
What's that exactly mean? These are personalities?
No, your personalities stay there, but there becomes a single interpretation of the reality is the same in all of them. And you have you ever watched a whole lot of birds fly through the sky?
Yeah.
Those birds aren't individuals. It's a spirit. One spirit, one consciousness. It's moving through them all. You know? You get hungry and you all get hungry. That's what it is. It's time to eat. Time to sleep. And just like in your own body, you've got millions and millions of cells. And they're all individual. They all have their own jobs or all their own thing. But you run through them all. Whoever you are, you run through them all.
Would you do that if there were 11 people? Would you be directed to what 11 people to connect with? Or would they be directed to you?
I don't have any direction on direction or desire to do that right now. If the time does not feel right, I did do 3 workshops with groups, which were not really to link the groups together, but to do experiments. And then it was then that I began to realize what was taking place if we did this. And then it was a great dilemma. How do you teach this? Because if you teach it, you become part of the group. So I'm trying to see exactly when the right time is and what it's about. I just feel it. We're not right there yet. A little bit further down the line. Really soon, like maybe next year.
And you got a soul now, or is that just you just going to select?
I got a feeling you'll probably let me know.
Can you also refer to the concept of ascension as is commonly known? Is that simply establishing the Merkaba field and being able to travel with it, or is that something completely different?
Oh, I thought I said that too. What do you got? 3 things going on here right now. When someone right now can die, If they die, they're going to go through the normal thing. They're going to drop their body. They'll move through their astral body over to, in a certain level, they'll go through the bardo. They'll do their whole step. They'll come up onto about the third overtone of the fourth dimension, and they will exist there in a life kind of like this one, but different, until a certain time, at which point they will then consciously move from there up to the higher levels. This is what it meant that at the time in Revelations when it was talking about the dead would rise. And that's one possibility. So if you're alive now and you die, you still won the game. If you happen to be aware enough to be conscious, in other words, die, and then through the death become aware of the Merkaba, which is another possibility, then you can move from there consciously through the great void, and you don't go to the death, the third overtone. You go all the way up to the 10th, 11th, 12th overtone, and that's called resurrection. And you'll reconstruct your body with you, though you won't need the one that you dropped, because you'll reconstruct it in a different way. So you don't really need, anyway, you don't, that's another possibility. And that one is very possible, and that's the one that most people will probably do at this point. But there is another possibility, and because it's there, life will use it. And that is of ascension. And ascension is different in that you don't die. There's no dying involved in ascension at all. You just choose the moment, and at that moment, or the moment chooses you, in the case if you wait till the last minute, and at that moment you create your Merkaba while you're still, before you die, in the world, and raise your energy levels and take your body with you consciously right out of here, over through the great void, and right up into the higher dimensional levels. But you all end up in the same place. So what difference does it make? It's like, there's hundreds of thousands of different crystal structures. Which one's better? It isn't better. It's just that it's a possibility, and life will try every possibility. I think that's our instructions. Is to try all possibilities, and so we do. And this is a possibility. So there's no wrong or right way. I don't see one way being better, one way. We all end up there, and there's no real losing. You're not better or worse or anything else like that. Suicide in the last week or so. She wanted to know about suicide, especially in the last week or so. You mean you had someone that died in suicide in the last week or so? I don't know how that affects things. I doubt very much if you're going to resurrect if you commit suicide. A being that is on the verge of resurrecting would love themselves too much to do that. So the only option that I could see would be that they would die in the normal way and end up over there in the third overtone. And if the reality is such that I think it is, they will still go on. But they're going to have to let go of a lot of stuff in order to do that. But evidently they can do it. There's a lot of people here that have done a lot worse things than that, and have incredible stuff going on, and are still going to make it. So I don't know. And then maybe these things that the American Indians are talking about, where masses of these people that are really not going to make it. Maybe there are portions of this evolutionary path are not going to make it, and part of them are going to go on to somewhere else. But I don't still quite understand how they go somewhere else, because if I got what I think is coming, there ain't going to be anywhere else. Everywhere it's going to go. So I don't know if that will really work. Now those are ancient Indian prophecies. which are just like Edgar Cayce and everyone else, might not really conform to this unique situation. So this is what I mean is it's real hard to try to second guess this situation.
Drunvalo, I'm a little concerned about, well, not concerned. I have some friends who are happily married and some that aren't. And if you're going into the fourth and fifth dimension with your memory because of your Merkaba, are you still tied to that person when you go through? Are you still the wife or the mother or the whatever to these beings that you remember from the third dimension going in?
No, you're not, unless you want to be. It's strictly to death do you part, and
like the death.
Yeah,
As far as that's
it's you can. You can if there is true love there, then true love will find itself again. It just will. You tend to move. This number 32, this is another thing about the number 32. If you ever look at people that study past lives, you will find an interesting phenomenon. Almost everybody that studied past lives will find this, is that people tend to die and be reborn in groups. In these groups, these little groups that move in and out together. Like the mommy becomes the son becomes the daddy, and all these various things, or the good friend becomes the other friend over here, or something else like that, and they move in and out together. And
Or a whole basketball team.
whole basketball team, Globetrotters, they've been doing this for a long time.
Drunvalo, when you refer to Earth as a starseed, and we also know on Earth here we have people that do have emotional problems that are out doing things that they shouldn't be doing, hurting people one way or another. Is there any chance that Earth would remain in a 3D reality where these people would still have a low-grade school where they have to learn to overcome hatred and envy and jealousy?
I don't know. That's one of the ones that I really don't know.
Is that the way it was supposed to be before this?
Oh, well, yeah, it would have. Normally, what would happen?
That's what would have. That was the plan.
Is a small part would go up in the fourth, and then the other ones would just have to stay back down here longer until they learn the lessons of life. And then those that were up in the fourth of that planet would slowly keep working. They're like the ascended masters. They figured it out. However, what happens with those guys is they usually go up real fast after that to the highest level possible of that planet. That's what all the ascended masters did. They got way up there north, and everybody else was still down here because they moved up real fast and got up in the sixth dimensional levels and things. Because once you make that first step, the rest of them are easy after that. They're much easier.
What would happen to those people now under the new scenario?
Either the third dimension is still going to be here, and they're going to have to deal with the situation down here that has been left, or we're all going to go, one way or another.
Take them, and they'd be alone.
They'll get it. They'll get it. They go.
I just never could figure out how they could. I mean, when the members of the Ascended Masters that I was communicating with said that they thought we were all going to go, I mean, I was just like, how? I mean, how can people who are so, these totally crazy people, and they're killing people and everything else, what's going to happen that could possibly align all that? And I just keep looking at it, and that's why more than anything else, if this is really true, it's got to be God coming in here, because
it's the only one that would forgive us.
There must be some way. Well, it's really a matter of them forgiving themselves more than anything else. That's really the key. And so I don't know. If this is really true, and if all this happens on these kinds of levels, and it isn't just a normal scenario that's happening, I've thought about this so much that there would have to be some incredible event that happens on Earth, the likes of which would just, I don't know what it would be. I keep thinking of all these things, Maybe that would help a lot.
Have they indicated to you that Earth would just be disbanded and turn into a Mars with no life on it, where it's no longer
If we
used?
can, what I've said to someone else before, if we continue, if not thinking along the lines of that, just thinking, if we continue the way we are going right now, or the way we have been going, the way we're going, where we're just making more and more bombs and more preparing and all this other kind of stuff, we continue in that direction, we're going to end up just like Mars.
Yeah.
We're going to end up wiped out. The atmosphere is going to be gone. I mean, it's going to be gone anyway, real soon. So, I mean, all these things are going to be destroyed, and the Earth will be nothing anymore. It'll just be a big barren desert. It'll look like Venus or Mars or anywhere else. Though I don't think that we are going to do that. But if it were not for this other factor coming in here, if it were not for this, for the higher aspect of the Ascended Masters and for all the work of lots of people that are changing things, I think that we would be in real trouble, real trouble coming real fast. But there is no, but from my point of view now and everything I can see, there's no problem here. I mean, we're going to make it. Now, in terms of how well the Earth is going to make it, and whether or not people are going to be here, and those kinds of things, you know, whether or not someone else is going to come back in here and use it again, and all those kind of things, I don't know. I just don't know.
I have my page question. I'll do really short one.
Page of questions?
I've been keeping you for the whole thing. But most of them have been answered. Earlier you said that in this scenario God was going to be intervening. Could you give us an example of how that?
What I said was,
it
appears like God is intervening. And God has not said, I am now intervening. But it definitely appears that way to me. And so...
In what way?
I thought I made... Okay. In the nature of the way that the evolutionary pattern is unfolding on Earth, the speed at which it's occurring, the incredible flawness of the way the movements are being made from one step to the next, the way that we are still here in this room at this moment, which I can hardly believe. And these kinds of things. No, I don't mean that kind of thing. I mean in this room that I can hardly believe, just on the planet, because it appeared to me, by everything I know, that we should be out of here by now. And nothing is going by the rules. All the rules are being broken. And so, from my way of seeing, it appears to me, in the way that all life is focusing on here, just the whole nature of the situation appears that something very big, very powerful is occurring. Maybe it isn't God. Maybe it is only the biggest being in the universe is acting on it.
You had mentioned that there had been a cigar-shaped shadow, and you were fairly clear about the fact that the one that was installed was in the next overtone, so you felt sure that that shadow wasn't installed by the good guys. So my question is, since they've seen that...
A cigar-shaped shadow?
Shadow, yes, upon Mars.
On Mars. Oh, it's an elliptical shadow.
Mm-hmm.
And, okay, go ahead.
And my question is that you indicated that they didn't know, they being our government, didn't know what this alien force was that was knocked out our satellites.
Right. However, they have a photograph of it, which they released into Europe. They even released the photograph, by the way, of the actual object striking it, which I was real amazed. And, a few years ago, they would never allowed those things. I don't know. We're trying to. It'll be here. We're trying to get all that stuff. And You want to know who they are that's there? What I believe has occurred here is, first of all, you've got the secret government who is on there and established themselves in that place also. But when the woman from Peru raised the ship and forced the Grace to move and leave off the Earth, they went back to Mars also. And I believe you have about at least 5 or 6 other races that are there that are working with them and using Mars as a base from which they sneak back here every once in a while and do tiny little things. Because there's just every once in a while, there's just like one little one here and one little one here, but there's none of this massive stuff going on. Because I don't think that they can exist here for very long anymore, but there's still a little tiny bit still going on. I know what their intention is. I hope they change that intention. They still they still want to replace us with this other race, and though it's not going to happen, but they still would like to see that take place, and so would some other people. And but at the rate that we are moving, it's hourly going to become more and more difficult for them to be able to do that. Every time one more person steps into the Merkaba, they cannot reach that person. There's no way. They can't get into them. They can't influence them. They can't kill them, if that was their thing. They can't wipe them out by switching them to another dimensional level. They can't influence them. And the Earth becomes stronger and stronger and stronger. Every minute that goes by, the Armageddon becomes less likely. But Armageddon would have been a reality if they could make it so. We're not out of it. When you get out of this room in the 3D world out here, we're not out of that Armageddon yet. But I really think we will make it out of it.
Do you know when the poles are going to shift?
If I did, I wouldn't tell you. That's like asking, what day are you going to die on? Would you want to know what day you're going to die on? Maybe. It's not good. It makes you live in the future and tend to fear a time ahead. And it's much better to live without fear and without anticipation and just to be here. The biggest thing, even without the fear and any of that stuff, it makes you live in the future. And so you got part of yourself extended out to that time when you really want to be right here. Because this is the only place you can do anything. There's really the future and the past is kind of an illusion. All there is this. And so the more your consciousness is focused in this moment, the more efficient you are and the more you're able to make changes and move. I don't want to know what the future is. I used to tell that story. I guess I'll tell it if you want me to. I guess some people haven't heard it. But I used to be very involved in knowing the future. I worked with tarot cards and astrology and the I Ching, you name it. I was into this, but I didn't think of. Because I always wanted to know what was going to happen around the road, down the road. And right after the angels came in one day, it was I think about 6 months after they came in, one morning they came in and they told me everything that was going to happen the next day. In a synopsis form, they said the phone's going to ring at such and such time, the doorbell's going to ring at such and such time, it's going to be this guy here, he's going to talk about that. Just laid out a basic pattern. It took maybe a minute of everything I was going to do. And I thought, wow, this is great. So I sat and watched to see what happened. And everything happened, just like they said, down to the minute. And so while it was happening, that morning when I was waiting for it to happen, they came in and told me everything that was going to happen the next day. So this whole day happened, and then I had this other day that was going to happen the next day. And then while that one was starting to happen, they told me the day was going to happen the next day. And the whole thing kept going, and I went through a huge amount of changes. In fact, it's really, every time I think about it, I laugh because I at first, this was like very serious to me. I mean, this was really important stuff. And the fact that this was happening was like, this was really significant. And then after I got over the really significant stuff, I got real quiet for a while. But then I remember this phase where I went through where my ego took over, and a sense of real power came over me. And people would call up, you know, and I'd sit there and the phone's going to ring in a couple minutes, and I'd go over by the phone, sit down, and wait for the phone. And I knew who it was going to be, so, you know, George was going to call. So the phone would ring, and hi, George, how you doing, you know? And I knew what he was going to talk about, and I'd play these games, and I don't know, it just felt good. I don't know what it was, but I did it anyway. It was a sense of power. And they kept giving me this information. I just kept getting it every time. And so it kept going. And then that lasted for like 2 or 3 months or something like that. And then that got old. And then this funny feeling came over me, and I couldn't quite pinpoint what the heck it was. And it took me a while to figure it out. And eventually I started figuring out that I realized what it was is that when they would tell me what was going to happen the next day, I didn't want them to tell me, but I didn't have the guts to ask them to tell them because they were these angels, right? So I sat there and I kept listening to it, and I started getting depressed. I started going down and down on the whole thing. I started getting lower on it, and then I went through this whole thing thinking, well, I got to tell them that I don't want this. You know, and I finally took all this guts, and I finally got it together. And one day they came in, and I said, "I don't want. Do you have to tell me all this stuff? I don't want it. I don't want to know it. I don't. You know, if I really need to know something, okay, you can tell me all that stuff like that. But you know, you don't have to tell me, do you?" And they go, "No." And that was it. They never told me anything anymore. And then I didn't get it. Then I sat there for a long time and I didn't get it. And it was like years later, when I was thinking in retrospect, then I got it. Oh, the reason they did all that was because I was so involved. I mean, I was always wanting to know what was going to happen. I was with the I Ching about 5 times a day and everything else, you know. And I realized that I was out of balance in a certain way, and it was interfering with me, so they just OD'd me on it until I got to the place that I didn't want it anymore, and I really don't want it anymore. I realize it's all perfect, it's all complete, we don't need to know that stuff, because all we got is right now. And when the time comes, we'll know what we need to know, and we'll handle it just fine. And it also takes the mystery out of life. That's what it really was. It's like, there's no mystery in life anymore. It's no fun. It's more fun. What's the most fun when you look at a movie? The most fun time of a movie is the very first time. The second time, third time, But the first time is where all the surprises are. And so it's more important for me. You may be different, and you may have a different makeup, and maybe you could take knowing what the future is in a certain way to use it in a good way. But for me, I don't think I could. It is much better for me.
The reason I asked is all the way over on the airplane from Kauai to here, I kept getting this sense of a polar shift, and I kept thinking, it never occurred to me it would be on the planet. I just kept assuming that it was going to be my reality within me. That some sort of polar shift was about ready, and that my concept of what my life was going to be was going to go like that.
It might be both.
So, that's it.
Your life first, then.
My question is twofold. Is there a difference between multidimensional selves and parallel lives? And what does that have to do with an oversoul group? Or is there such a thing?
There's a lot of things going on there. Multi-dimensional, what was it?
Multidimensional selves.
Well, that's the one where you're existing on various different dimensional levels. You can't say really simultaneously because the time thing, yeah, okay, you can say that, but anyway, you're existing in different different levels at the same time. That isn't accurate. What was the other one?
The reason I'm asking this is because I heard a story about how we came here in the beginning, and it was like the spark that got fractioned off. Whether it came from an oversoul group or not, we fractioned off and bits of ourselves went in past, present, future, in other worlds. And I'm just curious about that.
Well, I agree with that.
And how does that affect when this change will happen, the shift? I mean, I know everybody will be shifting.
Well, going up in dimensions is a combining of these components together. And
Will we be joining?
A rejoining of these components into one. And there's a lot of ways that can be for any particular individual. But as you go up, you tend to reach to a different consciousness level, which is a large body. And then you go up higher, you go up into a larger body of consciousness. It stretches further and further and further. If you're coming down, it's a division. It's like as soon as I hit the earth, in order to experience the polarity here, I had split myself into two. So I broke my spirit into two-ness. In order to experience polarity, I had to experience polarity. And so, well, there's about 300 and something people on this ship, and there was 3 other people that were. This whole ship was brought in here to drop myself off, another person named Balthazar, and one more person, and we left our Syrian bodies in these kind of a crystal-like casket sort of like thing, which they reused, and went into the 4th dimensional overtone of the Earth's dimensional level. That's where we came in on, and there wasn't hardly anybody there when we came in. This was a long time ago. And this was in 1819, and there was no. Went up in the higher levels. There was life there. It wasn't always in life, but there wasn't any real conscious life. And so we had to keep going up and 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 up, and finally found them all hanging out up in the higher dimensions of the 6th dimension. And but I had divided myself into two-ness. In my memories, it felt like it was right after we left, but it may have been a little later when we actually did that. But soon after, if I'd not done it right then, and went up and began to try to understand this whole thing. So I studied from 1819 to 1850. And then by 1850, I figured, okay, I'm ready. I'm ready for this one. I'm going to go down on the planet. And I was born into the Taos Pueblo. The chief of the Taos Pueblo had had a dream that a Kachina was going to be born to him. I don't know if you know what a Kachina is, but he's an interdimensional being, which is what I was. And that it was going to be a boy. And the wife also had a dream. His wife also had a dream that they were going to have a Kachina and it was going to be a boy. However, there was a medicine woman that was on the tribe, which was going to be the midwife, and she had a dream that the Kachina was going to come in and it was going to be a girl. And she never said anything to anyone because it didn't conform with what the other two had, and she didn't quite understand how this could be. We were born one evening in a teepee, the medicine woman was there, the daddy was there, and the mommy was there. The mommy gave birth, and it was a little boy. And the daddy saw the chief saw the little baby, and then was all happy, and they were happy, and he went out and left the midwife with the baby, waiting for the placenta. And the woman was exhausted from all this and laid back. When she thought what was coming out was the placenta, it was another baby. It was a little girl, which was me. And but the little boy was also me. But that was the divided part, me. And now the medicine woman realized that we were Kachinas, and she also realized that if they were told that it was twins, that they would kill both of us, because the Taos Pueblo will allow twins to come out. But she knew that we were supposed to be there, so what she did was she took me and hid me and took me out without anyone knowing it. And so the chief and the mom knew only of the birth of the boy, never knew about me. And later, a few weeks later, she hid me, and a few weeks later, she told the tribe that she found me. No one thought anything of it, because those kind of things happen. I mean, she thought it was from another tribe, and there's a lot of Pueblos right now down there, and nobody just thought a thing of it. And so she raised me, and I was raised with the mommy of the medicine woman. And I was raised as a crystal fetish person from the crystal fetish tribe. There are 12 tribes in the Pueblo, and I was connected to the crystal fetish kiva. And so all my training was in crystals and fetishes and herbs and these kinds of things. And however, when I was trained, she told me secretly that I was a Kachina, and that I was never, ever to marry or to have children. And so I lived that life, and everything went pretty good. I learned the whole thing. I did all kinds of stuff for them, and I know what they can do, and you would be amazed at what the American Indians can do, and the level that their life is at. What we tend to see is the pickup trucks, the beer cans, and the drunk Indians, which is what's happening recently. But there's another layer that's really extraordinary, and they have been devastated by alcohol in these things. I'm not saying that they haven't been, but the next thing about when I was about maybe in my 20s, I don't know. I got to think about it, I guess. 25 or 6 or something like that. One day I was very innocent, and I went out to the forest. I spent a lot of time in the forest by myself, gathering herbs and things. And I was out in my brother, which nobody knew that, but the medicine woman, his name was Two Feathers in English, and they gave him the nickname of Geronimo. And he didn't know. I didn't know really either. And but we were very good friends. We spent a lot of time together. We liked each other a lot. And we had another friend that was between us, this male. And the three of us spent a lot of time together. It was really his real close friend. And one day I was way out in the woods, all by myself, hanging out, just picking my things and everything. And this guy, this other one, happened along, and we ended up sitting on this hillside talking for a long time. And I ended up doing something I wasn't supposed to do. And Mom said, don't ever do that. But I did. And you know, I got pregnant on the first time. and they would have killed me, literally, if they would have found out. And so we agreed. See, I had a lot of freedom in what I did. And so after 2 or 3 months, I told them I had to get these herbs that were way over in the mountains, a long ways away. And I was going to be gone a while. And nobody thought anything of it. And I got on my horse and I rode away for a long ways. But what I really did is I rode about 10 miles away. And I had this place that was set up. And I stayed there. And this other person came and visited me every so often. I waited and I had the baby there. And when it was over, I gave it to him. And then I came back, and he did a similar thing to what my mom did. Is that he came back with this baby, saying that it had been given to him from another pueblo, and then he gave it. He had 2 wives, I think it was, and he gave it to them to take care of. I didn't have to do it.
No wonder you got so many kids this time.
I don't know if I've ever told this story. I don't think that I have. I don't think so. I don't think it's ever gone out before.
Parts of it.
You have.
I have?
In Sarasota.
I did? In Sarasota? And then this is the second time it's ever been told. Everything would have been just great and fine and no problem, except that Nura, I should say his name, who was friends with Two Feathers. They were really good friends, and time went on, and many years went by. I don't remember how many. Quite a few years, 8 years or so went by, and one day, it was all over with. It was all over with. And one day, Nura tells Two Feathers the truth, the whole story. They're hanging out somewhere together, and he tells them the whole thing. Figures that it's been so long. Wouldn't care. Wouldn't matter at that point. Well, Two Feathers was going to be the chief, and he was, even though he was a real popular person, he was serious about what he was going to do, and he knew that I was never supposed to do that either. And that from their point of view, it was actually worse than murder, because it was, I jeopardized the very life of the tribe by doing such a thing from their point of view. And I made a lot of mistakes in my first life, I'll tell you. I screwed up left and right on all kinds of things. And anyway, from that one act, the karma just kept rolling on. And he eventually told him, and when he told him, Two Feathers just blew up, lost control of his senses. Thought it was the worst thing he could do. And so he sat around and decided what he could do to get even with me for doing this thing. And he decided that what he was going to do was go get me, make me pregnant, and make me have a baby. And make me go through what I didn't go through. He didn't think it all the way through. All he thought was, I was going to have to pay for this, and I was going to have to do this again, and he didn't do it. And so, I was the medicine woman now, yeah, I was the main person. And we were doing some very, very important work for global work.
But was Two Feathers part of you too?
Yes, it was me. You got to understand, this is me coming back at you.
I thought that your parallel self, you really couldn't meet with your parallel self. That's not true then?
It's not true. It's definitely not true. This was a person that was a friend between Two Feathers and I. This man. And, or maybe it can only be done with Katrina's, I don't know. Maybe you can use the initial, I don't know, but it's not, I know for certain that you can do this. And, in fact, I'm still with this person right now. I still have connection with this person, even inside. And so I went and So what Two Feathers did is he went out and found me out in the woods and tied me up and beat the shit out of me. He did some of his anger out of it, and then raped me to try to get me pregnant. And then wanted to make sure that it worked. He came back several times afterwards. He beat me up another time, and then about the third time he quit beating me up. He forced me, and he did this probably about 20 times. But what happened is each time he did it, his heart was softening, and he kept changing because he had never been with a woman ever in his life. And by the time of somewhere around the line, I don't know when it was, he ended up falling in love with me. And I did get pregnant. But when the baby started to come out and everything, by then his whole attitude has changed. And now he realized I was pregnant, so he rationalized the whole thing again and said, "Oh well, the tribe really loves me, and I'll just tell them, and they'll make everything fine." I mean, it was like it wasn't thought out. What I mean by it wasn't thought out very well. He didn't realize he was implicating himself in some very deep things here, and so the tribe found out I was pregnant, and they found out who did it, and nobody said a word for a long time. So we just sort of held our breath for a long time, and the baby's born, and they still don't say anything. And a month went by, and 2 months. I think it was at somewhere between 3 months and 6. I can't quite pinpoint exactly where it was. I was very emotional in this whole thing about that time. But it was the baby's about 3 to 6 months old, and the tribe, his father comes in, brings us into this place, and tells us that we had broken the laws, and that we had to leave the pueblo forever and could never come back again. But I had work to do, and I had to finish my work first. And so, but Geronimo had to leave now. And this was in the middle of winter in December of 1848. And so I remember, and we had only 24 hours, and in those 24 hours he told me that he wanted me to leave all of this and come with him now and not finish my work. He wanted me to stop my spiritual work, which I couldn't do because it meant the whole planet would be harmed if I didn't do it, from at least how I saw things. And so he wanted me to leave my spiritual work and come and join him and just go out and live in the world by himself would be fine. He picked this spot down by the Rio Grande Gorge where I was supposed to meet him. And so he says, "You be there tomorrow, and I'll be there." I said, "I can't do that because of what I'm going to do." And he says, "You be there." And then that evening, it was that night they made him leave. He got on a horse with the baby. He took the baby, wrapped up in this blanket, and I remember at night riding off on this horse, and I remember looking in his eyes at the last moment. I'll never forget that. And he rode over the hillside, and I never saw him again. And what happened, the moment he went out of sight, they arrested me and put me into one of the adobe buildings and put a guard at the door and kept me in there for a month, for 30 days, to make sure that I wouldn't go get him. And in the meantime, Two Feathers went down to the gorge and waited for me at this place, and I didn't show up. And then he waited there another night. I didn't show up, and another night, and he ended up waiting 9. It was on the 9th night when it was cold, and we were getting cold. It really gets cold there. It was like 20 below zero. And on the 9th night, the baby froze to death. And he got so depressed over this whole thing that on the next night, at the very same time that the baby had died, he lay down in the snow and committed suicide and froze to death. And I didn't know this had happened at the time, and I kept going, and they made me complete the work that I was doing, which we were building the largest pyramid in the world. It was a pyramid that was 2.5 miles on each side. which still exists there today, which is the final pyramid that holds our grid up right now, which we wouldn't be in this room right now if it wasn't there. And it was done by several other tribes, and it was an extensive work over a long period of time. It was a crystal pyramid, crystalline lines lined up that held us together. And so when I was finished with that, it took about 2 more years, and they brought me into the kivas and said, okay, they said, your work is done here, however, you're not finished because you're ours. They saw me as almost like an object, like I was theirs. You're not finished, you have all these things, you can't be an Indian anymore. You have to go, we want you to go into a white body, and we want you to never cut your hair. That's why my hair is long. It has nothing to do with American hippies or this other stuff. It is because of a promise that I made, so that they would recognize me at a certain point. There's certain things that I had to do, and that I had to come back and do a whole list of things for them. I've done all the things for them except for one. I have one last thing I have to do, but that's not until much later. And so my sister Nita was my mother at that time, and Ken was my father. And they decided to come with me, even though they were the ones that told me that I had to leave. They came with me later, and the tribe understood all of this. And it was told from one son down to the next, and the whole pattern of the thing. That's why the chief, who was Good Deer, Wankancha was his name, understood the whole thing and went to my sister Nita and said, we know who you are, and we want to keep the connection and help the whole thing. And they've done all the ceremonies for me to make sure that I'm allowed to wake up and help. And in fact, it was the hi, you don't know me, but you do. And and then Joanne brought her out here, and here's this real beautiful, super long, red-haired girl. And we knew, in fact, the way we knew for certain was, I knew the story of my life, and she knew the story of her life. First thing I knew, really, beyond any doubt whatsoever, because no one knew my name. Nobody in the world knew my name but me. And she walked in and she goes, Chiani, which was my name. And at that instantly I knew there wasn't any doubt. But beyond that, I still wanted to check further. And so I said the first year, no, she said the first year of our life. I said the second year. And she told the story of the third year. And I told the fourth, and she told the fifth, all the way through to verify absolutely that this was true. And we knew each other. And then as soon as we got done telling the whole story and we realized, definitely beyond any doubt whatsoever, who we were, she looked at me, she says, you! You left me out there! No! I mean, she was pissed. Really pissed. I mean, she was her whole first term around, and she got so mad at me. And I had to explain to her that I was arrested and I didn't have any choice in this whole matter, because she didn't know that. And we went through a lot of things, I'll tell you, man. And we still are. We're still going through a lot of things. It has not been an easy road for either one of us. And she's a real hot redhead.
She's your other aspect.
She is me on another level.
Wow, it's incredible.
And we got married and had 2 babies, and these 2 babies were the 2 babies that we had that I had brought through before. I brought the same ones back through. Marley was the one that died 24 hours before. Died exactly 24 hours before. Mackie was born February 4th at 7:28. Marley was born February 3rd at 7:28. Exactly 24 hours before Mackie. And right to the minute. Right to the minute.
Drunvalo, what about your son that supposedly is supposed to be Merlin, or...
No, it's not Merlin.
Not Merlin, but...
Merlin worked... That's another whole thing.
I know, it's another story. It's a good one.
I was when I walked into the body happened to be married, and so my wife never knew that I walked in, even though my name, Drunvalo Melchizedek, came to my wife, not to me. The angel said, "Your husband's name is this," and she goes, we wrote it down, and she didn't know what that meant. She didn't know that really who I was not who she actually married, but right prior to that time, before I walked into the body, the angels came in and had asked that a baby be born into that family, which ended up in my control for a while. And they said that if we had this interdimensional being, that it would be born precisely on our wedding night when we got married. We had to get married and we had it on a wedding night. And so when they got married, and he counted back, when the doctors counted back, it was exactly to the wedding night. They said it would be a male, and that and all the various things. They gave a secret name, which I can't say right now, I guess, what his real name was, where he came from, which was the center of the central sun, and that he'd never been to the earth before, and he would bring in this pyramid of interdimensional beings. And but as soon as he was about to be born, or about somewhere in his birth, the angels came and told my wife that Zachary, who was what we ended up naming him, didn't come from her. It wasn't her baby. And she said, "Well, what do you mean? This is not my baby. This is in her tummy, right?" And she says, "No, it came from another woman out of her, came in on her fertility cycle of another woman, and that this other woman's name was Bupi Neobandara, and that she was in India." And so at one point, the angel said, "Would you like to meet this woman? Would you ask both of us if we would like to meet this woman?" And of course we said, "Well, of course we would." And so we were way out in the middle of that woods in that house out in the middle there. This is right before I walked in, actually. And I've got all the memories of him and me, both of them in there. And I had a friend came over. His name was Jim Ulmer, and he was a banjo player. I used to be into music a lot in the old days. Played a lot of different things, and we used to like to mix these. I used to play the silver flute to a banjo, if you can figure that one out before. And this guy, it was really good. It was anyway. And he one night they said that she would be coming in very soon. Well, this one night she came in to my wife. I actually fell asleep, and while I was asleep, my wife was woken up. The angels woke her up and said that Bupi was coming in, and I know what this. The first night it was only by her experience. I had the direct experience myself. A few nights later, the first night, what happened is and this weirdest thing. It's like the reality opens up, and there's like an oval with this kind of shimmering gold around the oval, and you look through into where the other person's standing, so that you see the rest of the world like this, and all of a sudden there's like a window in the middle of the room, and you look through into where this other woman was standing. So there was a woman standing there. She was dressed in a white sari with a red dot and a little bit of gold on the fringe, and she was Hindu, and you could see people walk by in the background. It was like, this is the weirdest, this is the best communication thing I've seen in this kind of level. And so she came into my wife and told her this whole story, this long story. Am I going too long here?
Who cares?
What happened? Stop if you're tired.
I'm going to tell just this one last story, and then we're going to close, because I think this has gone a long time. Because I got to pack up, and I'm supposed to be out of here by midnight. It's almost 11 o'clock. was
Probably
that?
this mic.
Oh, through the window. She told, it was a thing between my wife and her, and Booby said that, she said she would tell her the story of how it came in. According to Booby, an angel came to her and told her that she was going to have this being, like the other angels told us the same thing. Told her that it was going to be a girl, and that I guess, I don't know, other than that I'm not sure, but it was immaculate conception. She wasn't married, had no husband. And sure enough, she became pregnant, and when she became pregnant, she was told to go to Tibet, to a monastery there, and the monastery would take care of her. She went to Tibet, and the monastery knew that she was coming, let her in, and took care of her all the way through her pregnancy. When the baby was born, the monastery thought the baby was going to be a boy. That was their belief pattern. But the baby was a girl. And when the Tibetan monks saw this, they took a knife 10 minutes after the baby was born and put it through the baby's heart. This was actually part of the plan, according to Booby. The baby is coming in for the first time and wanted only to be to see what femaleness was. 10 minutes was enough, and and to go over to the other side and complete the other side to do what it had to do. Seems kind of weird. And so and then the baby came in through us. And so when Zachary was born, this woman sat up in the top, wherever that baby was. There was this folded back reality up there with her looking down at this baby. She watched over this baby for a year. I mean, like a hawk. If anybody would have came in that room and thought of doing something to that baby, I don't know what she would have done. I mean, she was not going to let anything happen to this baby. And but I noticed that every time I'd come in there, every once in a while, I'd look up there, and it would be a different background. It would be a different house or something where she was in. And I watched this there was like several times it changed. And I said, hey, what's going on? You seem to be moving a lot. And she said, because I would sit in there sometimes and sort of talk to her like we're talking now. And she'd say, well, the Tibetans that killed the baby have decided that I should die too, so they're trying to get me. And so I thought about that for a while, and I said, I came in one other time, after thinking about this for a long time, I came back to her and I said, how about if I just send you a plane ticket, and you get on a plane and fly out here to Canada, and we'll never find you out here, and I'll pay for your way and everything, and take care of you when you get here, and the whole thing. And she goes, well, let me think about that. She says, maybe it would be a good idea for me to leave here. And so, a few days later, she talks to me and she says, wanted me to talk to me when I walked in the room, and she said, I've thought of something I would really like to do. This is how I'd like to do it if you will agree to it. And I said, okay, what's that? She says, here's what I'd like you to do. Remember that my alchemist teacher, Wilf Chipman, the guy who was doing this, she says, I would like you to go to Wilf and tell him this. Tell him that in exactly 2 weeks, he's going to have an experience that will link him tightly with the woman that he's now with. He just had a girlfriend. He just had this guy, a girlfriend. And that they are going to have an experience where they will decide in 2 weeks that they're going to want to be married. And that in exactly 30 days from the day I tell them, she's going to conceive a baby. And the baby will grow up and it will come out a male. And that they will call this baby Merlin. And she says, and when the baby comes out, she says, you will hold me in your arms. You will hold me, her. You will hold me in your arms and look into my eyes, and you will know who I am. But you will never see me again until you are much older. and that I am then going to connect with Zachary, this other baby, and that we are going to become friends, and we will meet you later when you're much older. So here that was a long time ago. It was 20 years ago or something, and over 20 years ago. And so I felt real funny about going to do this, to tell this person this thing, especially since they were just boyfriend, girlfriend, and had not even talked about marriage, let alone babies. And so, but I did it. I sat them both down and I said, well, in 2 weeks, we're going to have an experience. And I just laid the whole thing out, told them the whole thing. And Wilf just looked at me and says, nah. We're going to give it, yeah, never going to happen. Well, I don't know what happened, but in 2 weeks they did have this experience, whatever it was, and which blew their minds, and they decided to get married, just like I said. And in exactly 30 days from the day that I told them, she conceived a baby. And the baby was born, and it was a male, and it was too much, and they named him Merlin. And from what... but I didn't know who Merlin was at that time. I didn't know about the legends of Arthur and all these other things like that. And it wasn't until much later that I was made to understand who this person was. And from what I understand now is that what Merlin does is he oscillates. A lot of people stay one sex for a long time in reincarnation and switch to another, but he goes every other time, back and forth in a way to keep perfect balance. And the last time he was female, as this time he's male. And he's doing the same thing that he did with King Arthur. He's got this other baby that he's trying to get up there to do something, whatever the heck it is, I don't know. And so when Thoth left here a couple of years ago, and he took the Merc bomb, went over the other edge, he told me, he says, okay, your next teacher is going to be Merlin again, but you won't meet Merlin until you get to England. And so that's why I've been trying to get to England, to get over there for a long time. And maybe I won't meet Merlin when I go to England. You got to move through these things with absolutely no expectations. It's the only way it works.
And he's only 20 years old, too.
I don't know where Zachary is. Zachary, at one point when he was 10 years old, I gave the mother a whole lot of money, a lot of money, and she immediately left and went to Mexico. That was the last I heard. And exactly where she is at this moment could be anywhere on the planet. And I've been told by the angels to leave it that way for right now. Though it's really hard for me because I was very close to these children. It's really, really hard. But and that's another whole story that leads into that and why that has to be. And I don't think we just can't do it. It's just getting too late. But well, anyone who wants to be a facilitator, if you want to know about that, look on the October. You got the list of the workshops. Look on the October workshop, and there is a name there, Madeline Burley Allen. She's the one that's coordinating all that. Call her. She'll tell you everything you need to know. There will be a facilitators program May 1st and 2nd, though I think this is a little soon for you to be thinking about that. I mean, you guys, if you're going to teach this, you need to make sure that this is really real for you and that it is worthwhile to teach and that it's something that you want to teach. And so you got to find out if it's something that you ought to do. And then do it for a while. And then if you've done it for a while, then you should maybe think about doing that. I think it's too early, at least for most of you. Like you, this is your second time. So you're already signed up on that, aren't you?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, okay, well, in terms of there is one coming up May 1 and May 2, and anyone who has been through the workshop is eligible to show these videos and teach it if that feels like the right thing to do. But I'm not going to have anything to do with that at all. It's going to be through other people. Very little to do with it. I just want to thank everybody that has helped to make this happen. Barbara Sheridan, who's done so much work to make all of this happen, and all the Rick and Susan and John that have filmed this thing, and all the people that have helped to make this come about. And for us, just want to tell you all thank you for doing that, really. It wouldn't have happened if you hadn't have helped it happen. And I really would like to pray that we all move safely into this other world of light, and that you remember to keep your heart open and be happy through all of this, because it's your joy that will guide you so clearly, no matter how dark it gets. As long as you remain happy and joyful and loving, there'll be no problem, none, not any. And it's your power, it's your strength. It's what light is all about. And trust in yourselves. And remember God with each breath. Remember the truth of the reality with every breath that you breathe. And I just want to say I love you all and thank you for everything.
Thank you.
Love you.
Love you.
All right. So be it. Let's hug each other.